The evening had turned into night by the time I made my way back to the dorm. The streets of our small college town quiet, except for the occasional whisper of the wind. The buildings, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, cast long shadows on the pavement, creating a tapestry of light and dark that felt both familiar and unsettling. My footsteps echoed on the sidewalk, a solitary sound in the otherwise silent night. As I approached the dormitory, the sight of its aged brick facade under the moonlight brought a mixture of comfort and dread. The building had been my home since the beginning of the semester, but it always seemed to hold secrets in its silent walls. I pushed open the heavy front door, its hinges groaning in protest, and made my way up the stairs to the third floor. My room, 3B, was at the end of the hallway, its door slightly ajar as I had left it in my rush to get to class that morning. Opening the door fully, I stepped into the room, the familiar sight greeting me like an old friend. The overhead light flickered to life, revealing the modest space I called my own. The bed, with its old mattress and even older frame, seemed to sigh under the weight of its years. The nightstand, a hand-me-down from some forgotten era, stood watch by the bed, its surface cluttered with books, papers, and a small dim lamp. The tapestry on the wall, a faded landscape scene, added a touch of color to the otherwise drab room. I had always meant to replace it, but somehow it had become a part of the room's character. I tossed my backpack onto the bed, its contents spilling slightly as it landed. Another night of procrastination, I muttered to myself, knowing all too well the pile of homework that awaited me. But the thought of diving into academic work was the last thing on my mind. I needed a moment to unwind, to forget about the stresses of college life, even if just for a little while. Turning on my computer, I heard the familiar hum as it came to life, the screen casting a soft glow in the dimly lit room. I set a kettle on the stove in the small kitchenette area of my room, the sound of water soon filling the silence as it began to heat. Maybe a movie will help me relax, I thought, scrolling through the selection before settling on an old horror classic, a favorite of mine for nights like this. The movie played, its eerie soundtrack a stark contrast to the quiet of the room. My eyes grew heavy, the day's exhaustion finally catching up to me. I drifted off, the sounds of the movie blending into the backdrop of my dreams. "Alex? Hey, Alex!" a voice called out, jarring me from my sleep. I opened my eyes to see my roommate, Chris, standing in the doorway, a look of amusement on his face. "Fell asleep with the movie on again, huh?" I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the remnants of sleep. "Yeah, looks like it. What time is it?" "Almost midnight." "You're going to ruin your sleep schedule, man," Chris chided, though his tone was light, lacking any real disapproval. I know, but I just needed to unwind a bit," I admitted, sitting up and stretching. The movie had ended, leaving the screen displaying the main menu, its music playing on a loop. Chris laughed, stepping into the room and taking a seat on the edge of my bed. "I get it. College life, right? Stressful days and late nights. Just don't forget you've got that midterm coming up." I groaned at the reminder, the thought of the upcoming exam adding a weight to my already heavy eyelids. "Don't remind me. I'll start studying tomorrow, I promise." "You better," Chris said, standing up. "Anyway, I'm heading to bed. Try not to stay up too late, okay?" "I won't," I replied, though we both knew it was a promise I was likely to break. With that, Chris left the room, closing the door behind him. The quiet returned, settling over the room like a blanket. I turned off the computer and made my way to the bed, the events of the day replaying in my mind as I lay down. Sleep came quickly, but it was restless, filled with dreams that seemed to blur the line between reality and fantasy. In my dream, I was back in my room, lying on my bed, the darkness complete, save for the faint glow of the streetlight outside my window. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a tall figure silhouetted against the dim light of the hallway. It moved towards me with deliberate steps, stopping just at the foot of my bed to watch me. I tried to call out, to ask who it was, but my voice was trapped in my throat, the words refusing to form. The figure just stood there, silent and imposing, until I finally woke in a cold sweat. The room as silent as ever, but the feeling of being watched lingering long after the dream had faded. The rest of the night passed in fitful sleep, the echo of footsteps and whispered voices haunting the edges of my consciousness, a prelude to the terror that awaited me in the days to come. The morning after my unsettling dream was a blur of half-remembered images and a sense of unease that I couldn't shake. I stumbled through my classes, the words of my professors sounding distant, as if muffled by the fog that clouded my mind. My friends noticed my distraction, their concern evident in their probing questions. "Alex, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost," Jenna, a close friend and classmate, asked as we walked out of our morning lecture. Her brow furrowed in worry, her bright eyes searching my face for a sign of what troubled me. "Just a rough night," I replied, forcing a smile that felt as heavy as lead. "Bad dreams, you know." "Dude, you need to lay off the horror movies before bed," another friend, Mike, chimed in, clapping a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "They're messing with your head." I laughed off their concerns, but the weight of the previous night's dream lingered, a shadow that followed me through the day. As the evening approached, the dread that had been a low hum in the back of my mind grew into a palpable tension. The walk back to the dorm through the old part of town, a route I had taken countless times without a second thought, suddenly felt fraught with danger. The decaying buildings loomed over the streets like silent sentinels, their dark windows watching my every step. It was then that I first heard the footsteps, soft at first, almost indistinguishable from the rustle of the wind through the leaves, but with each step they grew louder, more deliberate. I quickened my pace, my heart beginning to race as the footsteps matched my own, never falling behind. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, the remnants of my dreams spilling into reality. But a glance over my shoulder revealed nothing but the empty street behind me, the flickering streetlights casting long shadows that seemed to twist and move of their own accord. "Probably just someone out for a late walk," I muttered to myself, my voice sounding thin and unconvincing in the cool evening air. But the footsteps persisted, growing faster as I did, until it was clear I was not alone. Panic set in, my breath coming in sharp gasps as I broke into a run, the sound of my pursuers' steps a constant reminder of the danger that lurked just out of sight. I rounded a corner, the familiar sight of the dormitory coming into view, a beacon of safety in the growing darkness. I dared not look back, fear propelling me forward until at last I reached the door, fumbling with my keys in a desperate bid to escape the unseen threat. As I turned to close the door behind me, I caught a glimpse of a figure standing at the end of the street, tall and thin, its features obscured by the darkness. My heart skipped a beat, the fear that had driven me here suddenly replaced by a morbid curiosity. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice echoing down the empty street. But the figure made no move, no response, before turning and disappearing into the shadows, leaving me to wonder if I had imagined the whole encounter. I made my way to my room, my hands still trembling as I locked the door behind me. The familiar confines of my dorm room, once a place of comfort, now felt like a prison, the walls closing in as the reality of what had happened sank in. Morning found me unable to face the world outside. The events of the previous night replayed in my mind, a loop of fear and confusion. A knock at the door jolted me from my thoughts, a persistent sound that refused to be ignored. Peering through the peephole, I was met with a sight that froze my blood, a pale, gaunt face staring back at me. I called the police, my hands shaking as I reported the figure at my door. Grabbing a knife from the kitchen, I retreated to my room, the curtains drawn tight against the world. Time crawled by, each tick of the clock a reminder of my isolation. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me, and I looked again. The hallway was empty, the threat gone as if it had never been. But on the floor, a note, a simple piece of paper that carried a chilling message. "This is not the end." The words echoed in my mind, a promise or a threat, I couldn't be sure. And now, as I sit here writing this, the pounding begins again. a relentless force that seems to shake the very door in its frame.